Welcome, Aibuan. Today we're going to focus on the questions in our Cambridge book, Practice Book 8. So, let's have a look at the first test, Task 1. Now, as I told you in Book 7, the first 4 tests are for academic students, and Test A and B, which are the last 2 tests, are for the general students. So, the first test, Task 1. The pie chart below shows the main reasons why agricultural land becomes less productive, and the tables show how causes affected 3 regions in the world during the 1990s. Now, if you can remember this as well, we did it when we were doing 2 different types of tasks. Okay, so if you haven't gone through that video, please go back and refer the video for a good sample and answer, because we did this question in that lesson. So here is a pie chart, and it shows the causes of worldwide land degradation, right? Where you have deforestation, overgrazing the highest, deforestation next, overcultivation and other percentage as 7. Then how it affects in 3 regions, North America, Europe and Oceania, right? So Oceania, as you can see, there's an asterisk there, a dot like one. A large group of islands in the Pacific, including Australia and New Zealand. Okay, so you can see how it is by percentage for each region. So I'd like you to pause the video and on your timer for 20 minutes and write down a sample answer. Alright, so I hope you would have finished writing an answer by now, right? And so let's have a look at how you could approach your answer. Now, a sample answer, a good one, is obviously there in the previous lesson, so you could refer to that sample answer. For the ones who just want to recap, okay, the best way to do it, I would see, is to write your intro, then write the overall or the overview. And then you could talk about the pie chart in the first body para. And in the second body para, you could talk about the table. Okay, so that makes it much more easier for the reader to understand as to what your structure is. So first you will write the intro. And in the intro, you will write the type, and you will then paraphrase the question. Next, you will write the overview. Remember, you started with always the word overall, okay? And you would write what you can see. So here you can see the main cause is overgrazing as well as the main 2 causes are overgrazing and deforestation. And deforestation is most affected in Europe, right? Whereas overgrazing is most affected in Oceania. So you just write an overview. You could even talk about what is least being affected. Then body para 1, I think you could talk about the pie chart and talk about the percentages and specific information. Body 2, you could talk about the table. All right. So you can have your 4 paras. Right. So moving on into the second task, test 1. Here you need to spend about 40 minutes on the task. Some people think that parents should teach children how to be good members of society. Others, however, believe that school is the place to learn this. So 2 different views, right? Parents should teach this, whereas school should teach them to be good people. Discuss both these views and give your opinion. So one view is that parents should teach them how to be good members of the society, whereas the others think that school should teach them how to be good members of the society. And then we or you are supposed to give your opinion. Okay, what do you think? So this is a discussion essay plus an opinionated essay kind of put together, right? So I'd like you to take 40 minutes and then jot down your answer. So please pause the video here and start writing your answer. When you have finished writing your answer, let's have a look at a sample answer together. Right, so I hope you have finished writing your answer. Now, before we have a look at a sample answer, let's see how you can, kind of plan your answer ahead, okay? So, let me just scroll this up a bit. So, this is just some, basic one. It doesn't have to be this, right? So, you have your essay question here. Intro, body, conclusion. Okay, so you have your intro, body 1, body 2, and conclusion, right? So in the intro, we will be talking about society and how it's linked with parents and school. If you want, you could put your opinion here, right? There's no harm. Okay, some of you can think, yeah, let's not just put the opinion here. That is okay, that's not wrong. I'm going to put it inside brackets to say it's optional, okay. Some people could think that it's best to put it in the conclusion. Some people can actually think that you could write down an opinion as a separate body para. Right? So either way is fine. It's just that your opinion needs to be there. Right. So in either place, your opinion could be there, right? Some students can put it in the intro. That is fine. Some of you can put it in the conclusion without putting it in the intro. That's also fine. Some students can think, okay, why not write a separate para to describe my opinion? That's also fine, right? So next, let's see what the question tells. Parents should teach children how to be good members, right? So here you could write down body para 1, good parents, good school. So one para is going to talk about how parents should guide them to be good members of the society and how school should guide them to be good members of the society. It's important that parents should do it because parents actually instill values. Right. And then you could jot down a few other reasons as to why you think parents need to do it. Okay, maybe 2 reasons more. Also, you could say that school needs to do it because they spend more time in school, right? And that is where they have their second family. Friends, teachers, everyone, okay? And maybe you want to give another reason as to why school is the best place to instill these values, right? And finally, you could say, well, parents do these kind of things, school do these kind of things. In my opinion, what do you think? In my opinion, personally, I think that schools as well as parents, both parties, are equally responsible for making sure that the students end up as good members to the society. Okay, so you can take 50-50 or you can take either one and say, no, I think school is responsible, or you can say, no, I think that the parents are completely responsible. That is also okay. Now, just to remind you, if you put your opinion here, still you must remind the reader your opinion in the conclusion, okay? And if you put it here still, you must then again remind the reader your opinion. It's very, very important. Okay? So structure, you could just draw up a skeleton like this and then start writing a sample answer. Right, so let me start off by putting up a sample answer, right? It doesn't have to be that you have these same points. You can come up with your own points as long as you've got the structure, right? And you know that, your points are correct and you're supporting your argument. That is more than sufficient, right? All right, so let's have a look at the first bit. So you can say, at present, constant learning is not only a must, but a natural way of life. This is often split into learning at school and learning at home. Clearly, both parents and teachers have a role to play in the education of a child, but with the issue of educating a child in how to become a good member of society. Let's say in society. Has some debate as to whether teachers or parents should be taking the most responsibility. Right, so what I have done here is I've written the intro, okay? I'm not putting my opinion as such. What I'm saying is, okay, there's a general statement, and then you talk about how both aspects are being considered in society, okay? And society has this perception as to who is more responsible. Is it the teacher or is it the parents at home? Sorry, are the parents at home more responsible, right? So that's what I have written in the intro. Then we start writing our body paragraphs. So let's write. Firstly, now I'm going to talk about the school aspect first, right? So firstly, at school, children are effectively members of a community including peers and teachers. In order to succeed in primary and secondary education, right? They need to be aware of acceptable and unacceptable behavior. As teachers act as mentors and in this environment, it is appropriate that they should be the ones to ensure that their students appreciate and adhere to the expectations of society, both inside and outside school. The experience of being at school ought to enable them to interact as a part of a team while being respectful and appreciative of others and These skills are transferable to the outside world. Continue. Therefore, teachers should be acknowledged as playing a vital role in this aspect, right? So here, this is the first para, and this paragraph talks especially about how school children are being developed by school. So firstly, at school. Remember, as I taught you, when you're writing your topic sentences, they should be very clear for the reader to understand what exactly are you going to include in this specific paragraph. Okay, so here it explains about how school is important for students, right? So as teachers, they set the environment, and in school, along with teachers and peers and friends, right? Peers are other friends that you have. You are able to, take part in activities. You learn to be a part of a team. You learn to respect, appreciate others. And these skills are very important to be able to transfer to the outside world. Okay? So therefore, teachers play a vital role in this aspect of training the student, or rather giving them those transferable skills, right? So let us write the second paragraph. However, is not only taught in schools. Parents, as the first point of contact, of children, are responsible for planting initial seeds of acceptable behavior. As well as providing real-world perspective, which often cannot be accurately represented in schools due to the necessity for certain rules applying only within the walls of educational institutions. Evidently then, the role of a parent evidently the role of a parent is absolutely important for a child at a very early age. Okay, or you can say absolutely important at the early years of a child. Okay, so what in the second paragraph I've outlined is how it is for parents. Okay, so it talks about how parents are the first focal point of a child and how they plant this values or these values and behaviors in their kids. Okay, so rather than schools doing that, it is schools' job role to kind of make sure it is in place, but parents are really important because as this child starts growing at a very early age, parents are the ones who instill values and behavior patterns before they go to school. So here, that is what is outlined in the second body para. So coming to the end, how do we start the conclusion? We say, in conclusion, let me just scroll this up a bit. So we say, in conclusion, children require guidance in life, whether it be at school or at home, and it is the responsibility both of parents and educators. Educators means educational institutes, right? Educators to provide this and to liaise with each other in order to ensure the best possible introduction to society and accepted behavior for the children in their care. Right, so here if you can see, now the last paragraph is the conclusion. Okay, so you say in conclusion. So we say, okay, children, no matter what, require lots of attention from school as well as from their parents. So in order for them to be good citizens or good members to the society, they are equally important. And parents as well as what? We call them educators are equally important and should merge together if they want to make sure that the children are good citizens or their children are good members to the society. Okay, so what I've given is I've said both are important, so it's 50-50 balanced view. Right, so I hope you have got a similar answer. You don't have to follow the same way and say you have to have parents as well as educators. You can say parents are important, or you can say school is important. Either way is fine, but you need the structure, you need to have language and grammar. Okay, and make sure you answered the essay question. So they asked you to discuss both views and give your opinion, and that's what I have done here. Discuss both views and given my opinion. Or here you can say and add words like in conclusion, right? I believe. So you can add that bit. That children require guidance in life, whether it is school. So I would, add that part here just to signpost. In conclusion, I believe children require the guidance. So that brings out the point clearly that that is what you perceive. Okay? Or you could bring it at the end. So explain, I would like to keep it as a little summary of what I have written, and then finally say, I believe it's the responsibility of both parties. Right? All right. So with that, we've kind of completed our task 2. Let's move on into the next task. Now here is test 2, and we're having a look at the first task in test 2. The 3 pie charts. Now we've not got 1, we've got 3. So 3 pie charts below show the changes in annual spending by a particular UK school in 1981, 1991 and 2001. So we're supposed to summarize it. Now let's have a look at the 3 pie charts. Total school spending in 1981, right? Most of it was on teachers' salaries and then other workers' salaries. Then, of course, resources and furniture and equipment equal percentages. The least was spent on insurance. Okay, so the least spending continues in 1991 and 2001. Okay, but salaries have increased 50%. Okay, and the next one is still other workers. However, by the time it goes to 2001, teacher salaries are 45%. Okay, and the next highest is on furniture and equipment. So you can see that there is a change. Right, so I'd like you to pause the video here on your timer for 20 minutes and start doing the task. At the end of the 20 minutes, let's have a look at a sample answer. Right, so let us start with the introduction, right? Now we have to tell the type. So the 3 pie charts illustrate. Okay. Now you have to talk about what it actually illustrates. It talks about the annual spending by a particular UK school in 1981, 1991 and 2001, right? So paraphrase that and write it down. The 3 pie charts illustrate yearly expenditure on different categories in a specific school in the UK in 1981, 1991 and 2001. Right, so the 3 pie charts illustrate yearly not expending, we should write yearly expenditure. Let's write yearly expenditure. right? On different categories in a specific school in the UK, 1991, 1991, 1981 and 2001, right? Okay, next para. Overall, the most was spent on teachers' salaries, while the least was spent on insurance. In 1981, 40% was spent for paying teachers. This was the highest expenditure that year. This was followed by other workers pay at 28%, right? So you can continue to write this, right? How I would like to do it is I would like to write about 1981, 1991, 2000, or I feel there's another way you could do it, okay? You could categorize this in terms of teachers and salaries, because that's the highest. You can talk about how it fluctuates. So here it's 40, then nearly half, actually half, and then nearly half, 45%, okay? And then you could talk about other workers' salaries, how it declines, okay? 28 to 22 to 15, how it declines, right? So that could be one paragraph. And then the next paragraph, you could talk about furniture and equipment, how it was 15%, and then it dropped to 5%, and then again increased to 23%, okay? Whereas resources and books have declined, insurance had had a gradual increase. So I would put these two into one para, and I would put these two into the next para, and I would put this into a third para, if that's what you want to do in terms of the items. But if not, you could take 1981, 1991 and 2001, okay? Or you could even take 1981, talk about teacher salaries and other workers, and that in comparison to these 2 years. And then 1991, how it works, okay? And then 2001, how it works again. So it depends on how you want to categorize it, right? So I've just given you the heads up, and now you can continue to write the answer. Right, so moving on, we have our test 2, writing task 2. Now here, let's look at the topic. Nowadays, the way many people interact with each other has changed because of technology. In what ways has technology affected the type of relationships people make? Has this become a positive or a negative development? So this is like a direct type of question, as well as they're asking you for your opinion. Do you think it's positive or do you think it's negative? Okay, so there are two parts to answer. One is, in what ways has technology affected? And then, is it positive or a negative development? So I'd like you to take 40 minutes, pause the video here and write your answer. At the end of the 40 minutes, we could have a look at your sample answer. But before we give you time to write, I'd like you to just think about how are you going to plan your answer. So this is your essay question. Let's write, oops. So we're going to write our intro, and then we have our body 1, then I have my body 2, and then I have our conclusion. Right, so in the intro you write, you kind of paraphrase the question. Okay, there's not much of a thing to write the opinion. So if you don't really want to write it there, you cannot write it. If you want, you could write it here, right? I wouldn't typically write it there, but you could if you want to, right? And then here in body para 1, I'll talk about what ways. So way number 1, okay. And then I could talk about way number 2. And then in the conclusion, talk about if it is a positive or negative development. Okay, so you could think about it. Now, apart from that, you could, another way is put these together, right? So you could talk about, let me get another color. You could talk about way 1 and way 2. If you want, way 1, 2 and 3 is also okay in one para. And then the next para, you can talk about if it is positive or negative. And in the conclusion, give a summary and remind the reader if it is a positive or negative. So all of these possible ways are there to write the answer. You can choose how to write it, but remember what I told you, coherence and cohesion, that logical structure, that development, that progression should be there in your essay. That is very important. All right? Okay, so now I'd like you to pause the video for 40 minutes on your timers and write the answer. At the end of the 40 minutes, we'll have a look at a sample answer. All right, so let's have a look at a sample answer. Hopefully you finished jotting down your answer. Now here, nowadays the way people interact with each other has changed because of technology. I think that's quite similar. Paraphrasing is not really good. Okay, so it's kind of the similar thing. Oh, let me change the color. It's kind of the same thing, right? So not really paraphrased well. Yes, the technology has changed the people's interaction in very enhanced manner. Earlier people used to wait and try to find easy way to contact their friends or relatives living far. In past, there was no quick technology to contact or to establish any communication between one person to another person. So, student here gives the direct answer and say, yes, it has changed. And if you read it carefully, you can see that there are some grammar errors, right? And then there are some punctuation errors. The drawback with past communication systems. So, this needs to be simple, little things like that. Was that it were very slow and were time-taking process. But what I see is the student does have some points written through, but grammar needs to improve. The student does have a certain level of lexis, but tends to keep on repeating like communication, communication, communications. So the same word is repeating, repetitive use of language. Now the things have changed around. People from far distance contact their loved ones. Quality, the level of interaction between people has improved, right? There are many medium. So this kind of answer here, right? Like there are many medium, okay? And then the grammar errors, the punctuation errors, right? Even the structure, the clear structure is not there. So this kind of answer would give you something like a 5.5 and nothing above that because of your structural issues, grammar issues. I mean, certain simple sentence structures are fine, okay? But the repeating language, okay, and not breaking it down into paragraphs. But task achievement to a certain extent has been achieved, okay. So when you are writing the answer, remember to reduce mistakes which are seen here. Make sure you address your task, and that's very clear. Intro, body 1, body 2, and your conclusion. Clear paragraphing is there. Signposting is there. Use of cohesive devices, right? And use of good grammar, sentence structures, and lexis. So if you can focus on those 4, you can push up your score, right? So here is a sample answer that was extracted to show you that this is not a brilliant one as a 7, but this isn't like a 0 either. So there is some content, there is something to give marks. Right, so moving on, we're going to have a look at test 3, academic writing task 1. Now here, the diagrams show the stages and the equipment used in the cement making process and how cement is used to produce concrete for building purposes. So this is a process. You can see how cement is produced and then how concrete is then produced. So you have cement and then you use cement to produce concrete. So here you have limestone, the crusher, and the clay. Okay, so you put limestone and clay into the crusher and you crush it. Okay, and then what happens is you have the powder. You send the powder through the mixer to the rotating heater. Okay, and you heat it, and then the mix comes here, you grind it, and then the cement comes and then you put it into bags, right? That goes into the concrete production. So cement 15% and water 10%, sand 25%, and gravel are stones, okay? Small stones. So you put that ratio, 50 and 60, here you have 40, so you have the 100%, okay? So you put all of those 4 into the concrete mixer, and then you get concrete when you mix all of that together. That's your concrete mix, right? So I want you to jot down a sample answer for this, rather an answer, right? And then when I put up the sample, you can compare and contrast. So pause the video here for 20 minutes and jot down your own answer. At the end of the 20 minutes, let's discuss and write down an answer so that you can compare it against that. Right, so I hope you would have completed it by now. So let's have a look at an answer. The diagrams show the processes and the equipments, I think it should be equipment, right, used to make cement and how these are used to produce, not these, but how this or how cement is then used to produce concrete for building purposes. So you can see it's okay. The introduction is not that bad apart from a few grammatical errors, right? The first step in the cement production is to introduce limestone and clay. The end part is missing. These materials pass through a crusher that produces a power. Then this powder, so it should be powder. So you can see that the student is also making spelling errors, right? Then this powder goes into a mixer. After this, the product passes to... So I feel the student is writing the process, right? But it's not very, very clear, okay? There are spelling errors. When you say power and powder, there are 2 different meanings, right? So here I think the student is meaning the powder, right? But when you write power, it's completely different. After this, the product passes to a rotating heater which works with heat. Afterwards, the mixture goes into a grinder where the cement comes out. At the end of the process, the cement is packed in bags. So the student has covered writing the process, but I don't think it's using lots of good language. But student is using linkers. After this, afterwards, those kind of linkers. Referring to the concrete production, the process begins with a combination of 15% cement, 10% water, 25% and 25% and sand, 50% gravel. So again, grammar, it should be 25% sand and 50% gravel. These four elements are introduced into a concrete mixture. As mentioned above, the concrete production takes fewer steps at the cement production that the cement production. So all of these are errors, right? But the good thing is the student does write down the process, right? And the student does use a certain level of language, does use some grammar, sentence structures, right? The last difference between both processes is that the concrete mixture does not work with heat. Okay, so what the student wants to say is that this one does not work with heat, but that's not visible. We don't really want to talk about it, right? So I feel even the overall is missing here, the overview. That's also missing here, right? This is like a 5.0 answer. This needs to improve in terms of grammar and language, okay? So if we were to write this as a good answer, how could we write it? Let's just try to jot down a simple answer, right? So let's write down the diagrams illustrate the way which cement is made and how it is then used in the process of making concrete. Overall, the cement making process passes through four stages before being bagged, ready for use as cement, while the process of making cement requires, no, not say requires, let's say uses a number of tools. The production of concrete requires only a concrete mixer. Let's write down the first para. In the first stage of making cement, limestone and clay are crushed together to form a powder. This powder is then combined in a mixer before passing into a rotating heater which has constant heat applied at one end of the tube. The resulting mixture is ground in order to produce cement. The final product is afterwards put into bags ready to be used. Regarding the next para, right? Regarding the second diagram, concrete consists of mainly gravel, which is small stones, and this makes up 50% of the ingredients. The other materials used are sand, 25%, cement 15%, and water 10%. These are all put into a concrete mixer which continually rotates to combine the materials and ultimately oops, let me just write it again, produces concrete. All right, so having a look at the answer. Now first we have the intro, okay? Because they're diagrams, just use a different color, we say the diagrams illustrate, okay? And we talk about what the diagrams actually illustrate. One, how cement is made, and then what it is used for concrete, okay? Then we talk about the overall. So we write overall, and then the cement making process passes through 4 stages before being bagged, okay? So if you go here, it goes through 1, 2, 3, and then 4 before it gets into a bag, okay? So you talk about the 4-stage process and then what it is used for. And also you know that to make cement, there is a number of tools and equipment, right? But however, in the production of concrete, it only requires the mixer. And then we talk about the first stage, which is making cement, right? So how you put limestone and clay together and then produce cement. But then in the second diagram, it talks about how you make concrete, okay? So how concrete is being made by using gravel, sand, and the other ingredients. So here you have gravel and sand, which have the most percentages, and then you have cement and water as well, okay? And then you talk about how cement is being made. Okay. Sorry, how concrete is being made. Sorry, how concrete is being made in the second diagram. Right, so I think this gives you a good understanding of how to do the process better, right? I wrote an answer because I felt that, we do lots of bar charts and pie charts, but a process rarely comes up, so I thought let's do a good answer as well so that you can kind of understand as to what we're doing. Right, so moving on into the next task. It's test 3, task 2. Increasing the price of petrol is the best way to solve growing traffic and pollution problems, okay? So increase of petrol price, best way to solve traffic and pollution problems. To what extent do you agree or disagree? To what extent do you agree or disagree means your opinion, right? So you can either completely agree or disagree, or you can partially agree or disagree, or you can agree to a greater extent, okay? And then what other measures do you think might be effective? Right? So this is like a direct question again, blended with an opinion or argumentative style essay, okay? So before you start writing it, let's have a look at the structure. So here we've got the essay, we've got the intro, we've got body 1, body 2, and then we have the conclusion, right? So in the intro, you could talk about, it talks about increased price, so to solve growing traffic and pollution problems, yeah? So you could talk about pollution and traffic. Now, this is your skeleton, so it doesn't have to be a perfect, outline, it's just a skeleton. And here you could put down your opinion if you want to. So I'm going to put it in brackets, okay? And then body 1, right? Increase in petrol. So I'd like to talk about increase in petrol, how it affects the traffic as well as the environment. Okay, so that is talking about pollution. So it means when price increases, demand decreases, right? So because when you increase the price in petrol, lots of people wouldn't want to buy petrol and travel around here and there, so traffic would decrease, where people would start using alternative methods of traveling, like using the public transport. You could use a bus or maybe by train in Sri Lanka, right? Abroad, maybe you could use the underground railway system as well, tubes, trams, okay? And then obviously less pollution, because less vehicles enter the city, right? Less pollution is there for the environment. So other ways, okay? They're asking you what other measures do you think could be effective. Now, I think in Sri Lanka they did try to implement this, having a tax when you enter the city limits, okay? But in the UK, yes, you have toll gates, and when you enter the city limits, there is a tax. Because the tax is high, right? Lots of people don't come in their personal vehicles like to London, right? They would rather use the public transport because it's much cheaper, okay? So one way, what other measures do you think might be effective? Not just put the burden, by increasing the petrol prices, but you could also have a tax introduced when you enter the city, okay? So that's one way. Think about the other mechanisms that you could use to make sure that there's less traffic and environmental pollution is less, okay? Other ways I think could be to introduce better public transport systems. Like example, you could have buses. Again, I think in Sri Lanka they did try to implement this. I'm not sure as to if it's there at the moment, but I did see a few buses going to Colombo, right? So you could have those kind of AC buses, or you could improve the public transportation system to make sure that the people use more public transport. Maybe increase the frequency of buses, increase the frequency of trains traveling towards the city limits, so that people tend to use it more. Because I think in Sri Lanka what happens is lots of us go to Colombo to work, right? Whereas sometimes it's not been spread. Even lots of schools, the assumption that all the good schools are there in Colombo, so everyone tries to get into Colombo. So therefore there's a lot of traffic during the peak hours, right? So you could think about it. Other ways could be to minimize the peak times, okay? So you could think about different times to be introduced. Here, everyone needs to get to work and school at the same time. School, I think, starts at 7:30. So because schools start around 7:30, and then the office time also is around 8:30 for most working people, there is a huge, traffic flow during the peak times. But you could think about alternative times, starting school at 9 and stretching it till about 3 maybe. That's what happens in the UK. So they start at about 9. And the time stretches till about 3, so that, children can actually go to school a little later. But, there could be practical issues again there, right? And also trying to kind of promote school which is close by to your house. Here we all try to send our kids to school in the vehicle or a bus or, the school van. But there in the UK, it's more like walking, right? So you walk to school more or less, because you go to the school that is close by to your place. So you don't need to, get up really early and travel, etc. So maybe changing the times, introducing more friendlier methods, like, going to a school which is close by and promoting those kind of ways could help you to reduce the traffic as well as to reduce the pollution, okay? There are pros and cons in each of these ones. I've just given you some ideas. You don't need to write everything. I've just given you what I feel. Okay, so you can pick and choose and put down your own ideas as well and come up with your map before you start to write your answer. So I'd like you to pause the video for 40 minutes and jot down an answer. At the end of the 40 minutes, we could have a look at a sample answer, not everything maybe just the start so that you kind of understand what the flow is. Right, so please pause the video here and start writing your answer. Alright, so let's have a look at it. Let's start off by saying nowadays oil is the most harnessed type of energy and it is predicted that the amount of fossil fuel exploited would be exhausted. That means would finish, right? By 2060. Hence, there are some suggestions that gasoline prices should be increased to reduce traffic and environmental problems. From my perspective, I'm convinced by the statement that developing a clean energy system would be the best solution explained. Para 1. On the one hand, petrol is mainly used for transportation and other heavy duty machines such as electric generators. Increasing petrol value exert a detrimental alteration on gasoline related services such as taxi. However, taxis, right? Let's say taxis. However, this tendency makes people to hesitate when considering to get a destination to live and work. Live and work. Right. So you can continue to write this bit of the paragraph. Okay. So I've written the introduction. Okay. And then we start explaining the views. Okay. So on the one hand, you talk about how petrol is important and how the increase of petrol price will actually affect. And then the next para, once you complete the idea of this, you can say, on the other hand, and then talk about the alternative methods. And then once you finish that para, you can jot down your conclusion. So start off the para by saying, in conclusion. Right. Okay. So I hope you've jotted down your answer, which is to a similar structure. Okay. But maybe there are some different points. That's okay. I've just started it to show you that this is the flow of the answer. All right. So the reason I'm not giving everything is because obviously there's nothing saying this is the only answer you can write. Okay. Writing is a skill and you need to make sure that you get your writings assessed to know what your level is, what kind of mistakes are you doing, and how to improve on your writing skills. Okay. So writing is a skill where it's not easy for you to do it on your own because you need a teacher to assess your skills and see, okay, which ones are correct, which ones are not correct, where can you improve. Okay. But you could also use AI to check your answers. Okay. But that is quite limited if I'm not mistaken. Right, so that's where you need a bit of human touch, right? So I've put down an answer for you. I mean, more or less some sample answers, and then the others I kind of signpost and let you know that this is the flow of the answer. Right, so let us have a look at the next activity, or rather the question. This is the last test for academic students, right? Now here you have to spend 20 minutes on the task. The graph below shows the quantities of goods transported in the UK between 1974 and 2002 by 4 different modes of transport. So let's have a look at it. 1974 to 2000, right? 1 million tons that was transported, right? And the first one, let's color code it. I think that will be easier. So the pink line is the road. So it's easier for you to kind of look at it. And then let's take the blue one for rail. Okay. And the other two I think are quite easier because this is for water and the dark line is for pipelines, okay? So I'd like you to take 20 minutes, pause the video here and then jot down your answer. At the end, let's have a look at a sample answer. Alright, so I hope you would have completed your answer by now. Let's have a look at a sample. The graph illustrates the quantities of goods transported in the United Kingdom by 4 different modes of transport between the period of 1974 and 2002. So that's fine, I think. Over this span of 28 years, the quantities of goods transported by road, water and pipeline have all increased while the quantity transported by rail has remained almost constant at 40 million tons. So you can see that, okay. So rail, which is the blue one, it is going up and down a bit, but really not that much of a difference, okay. Road has increased. Water has increased, pipeline has also increased. So this looks like more like an overall, okay? So you could signpost by saying overall, comma, and then write it down. Seems like a good answer, the first bit. Let's have a look at the next bit. The largest quantity of goods transported both in 1974 and 2002 was by road. It was 70 million tons and 98 million tons respectively. While the lowest both in 1974 and 2002 was by pipeline. The amount of goods transported by water was constant, where it showed an exponential growth rising to almost 60 million tons, after which it plateaued, okay, for about 20 years before starting to rise gradually again, okay. So I think the student is, yes, using good language, using good grammar, and nicely explaining the line graph. The amount of goods transported by rail is almost constant, with decreases in quantity between the years. It is also interesting to note that almost all showed a decrease in, I think, so there's a little error here, right? The student in 1994 in amount of goods transported except for pipeline, which actually peaked at that year. So in conclusion is what the student has written, but you know, we don't need a conclusion. But saying so, the student has written a conclusion and the student has used good language. What I feel the student could improve more on is writing it in clear paragraphs, okay? But this kind of answer would be a 7, okay? So student is writing good answers. Here and there some spelling errors, here and there some grammar errors, but overall it tends to be good, okay? So could even push it up to like a 7.5 actually, because it does have everything of a 7 and some positive features of 8, I would say. Yeah. Okay, so I mean here is fairly a good sample answer for you. So you could actually take the good features of this and compare it against your answer. Coming to the writing task 2, which is the last writing task for the academic students. Here, in some countries, the average weight of people is increasing and their levels of health and fitness are decreasing. What do you think are the causes for these problems and what measures should be taken to solve them? This is a direct question style essay, okay? So here you have to answer 2 things. What causes people to be overweight, okay? And what measures can be taken to solve them? So, if you were to plan this, right? So I'm writing E to just say it's your essay question, right? Intro, you talk about the trend of being overweight, right? And then you have your body 1, you have your body 2, and then you have the conclusion. Right? So body 1 is where you actually jot down the causes as to why people are becoming overweight. The next one, you could write down the measures. What could be done to solve, okay, these problems? So the problem is actually being overweight and people are not being healthy and they are not being fit enough. So what causes? Maybe 2 to 3 reasons. And then what measures can you take in order to control this situation? Okay. I think for causes, you could jot down busy lifestyle. People actually don't have time to be preparing healthy food and their diet is not very healthy. Okay. So therefore, it's very hard for them to kind of have healthy food. The other thing could be that they don't want to go to the gym. Okay, so they feel, no, it's not that necessary, it's not necessary for us to go to the gym. We could just take a slight walk and that would be okay. But the real thing is that might not necessarily be the case. You need to be fit, so maybe going to the gym, working out is important, okay? So what measures could be taken is you kind of implement, not when you're big, but from your school days, introduce, right? You can introduce healthy programs, fitness programs for school children, okay? So that they could actually practice it. And apart from that, okay, you can make sure that parents are aware about these things. So that when children practice these good things at school, they could actually come and, make sure that their parents are aware about it as well. Pause the video here and then write down your answer. At the end of the 40 minutes, let's see just maybe a quick sample as to what can be a good answer. Alright, so hopefully you've completed your answers. Let's have a look at a sample answer, right? Now this, I thought we'll put it up as a critic so that it's easier for you to kind of, have a look at a good one and your one, right? But this is just for like a critic to see, is it a good one or is it a bad one? Not bad, actually. Is it a good one or an essay that you could improve on, right? In some countries, the average weight of people is increasing and their levels of health and fitness are decreasing. Now, this one, is it good? Just to rewrite what is there in the question? It's not good. This is something you shouldn't be doing, and that's why we did paraphrasing in lesson, if I'm not mistaken, 2 and 3, right? So go through those techniques if you feel you're writing something which is similar to this one. This is not good paraphrasing. This means you're just rewriting what is there in the question, okay? I think that the causes of these problems are due to unhealthy lifestyle. They're not asking you that very, as a simple one answer. So not really a good one here, okay? Nowadays, people are getting more and more lazy. They want to convince everything when they come from home. If you have a look at it, student does have good ideas, but limited vocabulary, okay? And kind of repetitive things. So when you say fast food, the examples, but the student keeps on, re-emphasizing the same points over and over. The next one, I think the main cause is lack of exercise, okay? And the student talks about another point, okay, where they don't eat healthy because of their busy lifestyle and they don't do the necessary amount of exercise, the lack of exercise. The last one, it talks about what could be done. So the student says people should think about eating a balanced diet. For example, eating more vegetables and fruit, and also eating less meat and drinking plenty of water, okay? And then not, so cooping up, it should be coping, right? Right, I'm not sure what the student tries to explain here. Seems to be a bit out of the context as well, right? So I would say this one is somewhat like a 5. Okay, there is a level of task achievement. There is a certain level of coherence and cohesion. Go through the band descriptors. Lexis is quite limited. Okay, grammar, simple sentences are accurate, certain ones, not everything, right? Therefore, I would say this is a 5. So if you're writing, try to avoid these kind of answers and jot down the good ones. Now that I've done many samples, you know what a good one is, okay? Right, so that was the end for academic students. Now it's for general students. So if you're doing general IELTS, then this is your first test, test A. You should spend about 20 minutes on this task, okay? You have recently moved to a different house. Write a letter to an English-speaking friend. So is this formal or semi-formal or informal? This is informal. Okay. In your letter, you have to explain 3 things. Explain why you have moved, describe the new house, and invite your friend to come and visit you. Okay. So, you know how many words to write? You've got 20 minutes. Pause the video here and start writing your answer. All right, so I hope you have finished writing your answer. Let's have a look at a sample one. So you don't need to write any addresses, you know, right? So let's start. Dear Amy, finally, I'm writing to let you know that finally we have moved to a bigger house. We just could not go on living in the 2-bedroom apartment. Now that the children are growing up and we need more space for indoor activities. So we started looking and finally, finally, here we are in our new home. Next para. I'm sure you'll love it. We have 3 bedrooms now and 2 balconies. The house comes with spacious bathrooms and a modern kitchen. The kids are happy because there is more space with the big living room and the garden outside. But Adrian is perhaps the happiest of all because this house is near to his office. Next one. Why don't you come around this weekend and see what you think of our new place? Right? We would all love to see you, and if the weather is good, we can have a barbecue party in the garden. Coming to the end of the lesson, our new address and phone number are below. So give us a call and let us know when to expect you. So let's write down the new address. So it's 156 Duke Road, Chiswick, W4 2DF. Okay, and 0044 712 3487. Okay, with lots of love. All right, so here is a nice answer. Okay, you can see that the first bit is what you have to do. why you moved. So I'm explaining to my friend, why did I move, right? So I'm telling her, I'm writing to let you know that I'm finally moving, or I've moved actually to a bigger house, okay? Why did I move? Because it was rather a 2-bedroom house. It didn't have much space for the kids, so we decided to move, right? Then coming to the next one, what do I have to do? Tell her about the new house. So I tell her, we've got 3 bedrooms, we've got 2 balconies, there's a nice modern kitchen, spacious garden and living room as well. And I also tell her a bit of news that Adrian, my husband, is really happy because the house is close by to his office. Then next para, invite your friend. So that's what I've done in the 3rd para. I've invited my friend to come and see me, and I tell her, okay, below is the address and the phone number. So let us know when you're going to come by. When can we expect you? So my address is 156 Road, Chiswick, W2DF, W42DF. And this is my new phone number. And with lots of love, Emily. Right, so this is like a fairly good answer. I think for general students, it's comparatively easier than for academic students. I'm not saying it is easy. I'm just saying comparatively, it's a bit easier, okay? Right, so, essays, of course, I'm sure you've gone through the before ones as well. Let's go through this one. Today, more people are traveling than ever before. Okay, sorry about that. Than ever before. Why is this the case? What are the benefits of traveling for the traveler? Again, direct style of essay question. Okay, so why are people traveling more and more than in the past? And what are the benefits? So, stop the video here, pause it. Okay, not stop, rather pause the video. Time yourself for 40 minutes and then jot down an answer. So let us have a look at a sample answer. Okay. So today more people are traveling than ever before. The reasons for this increase are many and varied. On a simplistic level, there are large numbers of means of transportation. There are more cars, buses and trains in operation. Okay. So nice start. The student is writing an intro. Okay. And what should we do? Why is this the case? I think the student is also kind of writing everything together. Oops. Okay. So clear paragraphing needs to be there. Like an introduction should have been there, would have been much better. Okay. The cost of traveling, even though it is at present increasing due to an economic slowdown globally, is still relatively affordable to many people. So nicely, the student is writing down why is this the case. Okay. This affordability is further enhanced by the use of credit cards and loans in order to fund travel, especially for holiday purposes. An increase of travel companies in competition with each other has also helped bring package prices down. Nice. Good language, good ideas. Only thing, a bit of structure is what the student needs to fine tune. Then what do you have to do? What benefits the traveler gets, okay? So basically the combination of these two gives a lot of benefits for the traveler, right? They can obviously travel greater distances, right? And the services are good. And also people traveling locally, it supports them. So in conclusion, there are many reasons why it has improved and what kind of support they can get. Okay, so fairly good answer. Okay, only thing is paragraphing needs to work, like in conclusion needs to come to the next para, a nice introduction needs to be there, but lexis is good, grammar to a certain extent is good, right? Not a lot, but it is good. This would look like a 6.5 answer. Okay, but I would say lexis is of course good. It's like a 7. Student has written good words. Okay, nice, good examples as well. Right, so we come to the last test, right, which is for general students. You recently bought a piece of equipment for your kitchen. Okay, but it did not work. You phoned the shop, but no action was taken. So you're writing a letter to the shop manager. This is formal. Describe the problem with the equipment. Explain what happened when you phoned the shop. Say what you would like the manager to do. So take 20 minutes, pause the video here and write down your answer. Alright, so I hope you would have completed it by now. Let's have a look at a sample answer. Dear Sir, Madam, so why is the person writing it? I'm writing this letter to explain my problem, which recently I bought dish from your shop, then it is broke. Is the grammar good? Not very good. Trying to write complex, not that great. Last week I bought a small piece of dish for my kitchen. I got warranty for that when I current it to my house. Suddenly when I walking to the street, I heard something is broke. So student needs to improve in grammar. Student needs to improve in lexis. But he or she has written the 3 paras. Okay, it has to be yours faithfully, not just faithfully, right? So student needs a lot of improvement. If you've written something which is more better with grammar and all, then good, right? So as I tell you always, writing, you need to get it assessed to know if it is good or bad, okay? So this one here, I would say is like a 4.5, not a brilliant answer, but I would say student is trying to exhibit certain levels of skills, right? But need for improvement, I would say a lot for a 7, okay? All right, so moving to our last task, which I think now we've done so many essays, right? You could do this on your own. Some people think that it is better to educate boys than girls in separate schools. Others believe that boys and girls benefit more from attending mixed schools. Discuss both views and give your opinion. So 1, separate schools. 2, mixed schools. 3, opinion. This is a discussion plus argumentative or opinionated style essay. Okay. So, you need to tell in your answer. Let's write down intro. So, you talk about schools. If you want, you can put your opinion. Body para 1, you talk about separate. Body para 2, you talk about mixed. And then body para 3, you can talk about your opinion, or in the conclusion, you can give your opinion. Right? So when they go to separate schools, good. Okay. There are only girls, and children feel more confident when they're in the same gender. Not like when they're small. As they grow up, they prefer sometimes, okay? And they're much more comfortable. Some parents can think it's safer, right? Whereas if you go to a mixed school, you get to meet both genders, and they build up their personal skills better, okay? Some parents can think like that. It's good to mingle with the same age, opposite sex as well. It's good, right? So you could think about different reasons and then jot down the answer. So intro, body 1, body 2, and then the conclusion, you also need to put up your opinion. So pause the video here and then write your answer, and that's going to be like a complete homework answer for you guys. It's been a long lesson, I know that, right? But if you feel that it's longer, please pause it time to time and do the activities. Writing is really important, okay? Lots of people don't pay much emphasis towards their writing, and that's what brings their score down most of the time. So please pay attention, take time, and do the tasks. So with that, we come to the end of the lesson where we had a look at the practice questions in the Cambridge Book 8.